What's up, snappers? Welcome back to the channel. DREWSKY here. Today we're gonna be looking at the brand new card Xorn to see if he's worth your precious resources. We're gonna be looking at his key Synergies Counters and some decks that I brewed for him. But wait, before we do that, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. I do weekly reviews of the brand new card in Marvel Snap, so if you don't want to miss out, hit that notification bell right now. Now let's get back into it. So I'm proud to announce that I'm running a giveaway for the PAX Bundle on X and on YouTube. So if you want to enter, make sure you follow my rules about how to enter into the giveaway. And good luck to everyone that enters in the giveaway. Now the question is, who is Xorn? Let's take a look. So Xorn in Marvel Snap is a 2-cost, 3-powered card with the ability of after any 3 or 4 cost card is played here, move it to another location. So I believe this is a very interesting tech card in Marvel Snap. Being able to move cards is really good for decks like Scream or even Craven, or even just moving a Cosmo out of the certain lane or any dominant 3-cost or 4-cost cards. I believe he definitely has potential to be somewhat of a menace in Marvel Snap. I could see the potential of him doing very well in move or Scream decks, or anything that's involved with move. I could definitely see him being useful. Move is definitely prevalent in Marvel Snap. We will see how valuable Xorn is. Now let's take a look at the pros and cons of Xorn. So the first pro that I want to talk about is that it's great ability to capture early prio for a lane. Priority, I mean, is like gaining power in a certain lane. If you want to make sure you have power in a certain lane and being able to move cards out of that lane essentially gains you that priority in that lane, and you can move obviously 3 and 4 cost cards. Obviously you cannot move any of the 1 or 2 cost cards, but if you need early prio, Xorn potentially could be your card. Another pro that I want to talk about is that it works well with low cost Scream and move decks. So essentially you want to pair him up with a card like Scream, move a card out of their lane and then Scream gets value, obviously giving them that plus power. And low cost cards, if you can surround them with like cards like Sunspot, for example, and gain, power in a certain lane that he could be moving those, 3 or 4 cost cards, then essentially, you get some value there. And obviously move decks, I will explain some of the cards that work well with him. I could definitely see him being valuable in, the move archetype. So another pro about him is that it's a legit counter against Cosmo or other dominant 3 or 4 cost cards. Potentially, if they are running a big powered card in Xorn's lane, then you could definitely Shang-Chi it, Shadow King it, and then obviously, if you do run Shang-Chi, then they'll move the Shang-Chi. But again, there are situations where you can potentially use that as your benefit. So now let's talk about the cons. The opponent can still play 1 to 2 and 5 to 6 cost cards in that lane. So there is a little bit of niche situation with Xorn. Only 3 to 4 cost cards will be able to be moved. It's not really protection of those other cost cards. So he has a reciprocal effect, meaning the opponent can benefit off of his ability. If you're facing against a move deck, you definitely might be in trouble. If they're running Vulture or Red Wing, definitely huge benefit for them. And again, you can't really control that. Another big con about him is that it moves cards to random locations, just like Hercules. You definitely don't know where the cards are going to be moved to. So again, agency and consistency really matters, and knowing where the cards are going to be at definitely is strong in Marvel Snap. Now let's talk about the key synergies and counters for Xorn. So the first synergy that I want to bring up is Scream. Of course, Scream loves Xorn. You definitely play Scream in Xorn's lane. All that benefit from all the movement definitely can help out Scream. Another great synergy is Vulture. Of course, Vulture is a 3-cost card, so that plus power with Xorn, being able to play Vulture in Xorn's lane and get that free move is really good. Red Wing is another great synergy with Xorn. Of course, 3-cost card for Red Wing, and being able to get a free play from your hand with Red Wing and Xorn, very, very good. Now let's talk about the counters. Red Guardian is a great counter against Xorn. Xorn's ability is a static or passive ability, or however you want to call it. Kingpin is another great counter against Xorn. Any of the cards that are moved to his lane get that -2 power, so very good value of Kingpin. Craven is another great counter against Xorn, especially all the cards that are moving around on the board.
Your opponent could get that +2 power for the card that is moved from Xorn, so be careful of Kraven. Now let's take a look at the decks I brewed. I think they're pretty fun and competitive. Let's take a look.
So the first deck that we have is called Mean Xorn Move. This is my take on the Toxic Move archetype. I believe Xorn could work pretty well in this list. Batroc is a good choice in this list, especially with the value of him with Captain America's shield, being able to move that shield, and then Batroc will follow it. And any movement really helps with Hydra Stomper and Kraven. Scream is a must-have with Xorn. That combo is gonna be really good with Scream being in Xorn's lane.
And then get all that stealing power is really good.
Sam Wilson's Captain America's shield is just a must with this type of move list. Moving that shield gets benefit for Miles Morales, Batroc,
Kraven, the list goes on and on. Xorn's value in this list is to be paired up with Scream primarily, and you could even play cards like Hydra Stomper, Polaris, Stegron, or Miles Morales in his lane and just to get some movement going. But other than that, it's more to counter your opponent. Spider-Man is here to move your opponent's cards to Kraven's lane, get some stealing power for Scream and value for Hydra Stomper.
Hydra Stomper, like I mentioned, it gets all the value of all the movement from this list. There's gonna be tons of movement, so Hydra Stomper should have some really good power value. Polaris is here to move cards to the Kraven lane or to steal power with Scream and even discount Miles Morales. Shang-Chi, of course, is for all the big power cards in the meta, so definitely you can run him in the later turns.
Miles Morales more than likely will be a 1-cost 6-powered card with all the movement with this list. Stegron is really here to disrupt your opponent and to even potentially run Stegron on Xorn's lane to punch out a card from their lane.
Cannonball is a great finisher in this list, especially bunting out a card from a certain lane, maybe potentially pushing a card to the Kraven lane,
and even generating power for Hydra Stomper. Now let's take a look at my second list.
Now this list is called Xorn Dump. This is my iteration of the Red Wing Dracula dump style list. I believe Xorn will work well with this list, especially with the synergy like I mentioned with Red Wing.
Definitely huge value with Red Wing bringing down a card for free.
Aranya is pretty good in this list, especially moving cards like Spider-Man 2099 or Red Wing.
And potentially moving cards to Madam Web's lane.
Ghostfire is another mover, just like Aranya. You could definitely use her for the same type of purpose. Moving Red Wing or moving any other big cards or any of your cards really in this list.
Madam Web is pretty good in this list, especially if you could play Red Wing in her lane and then move Red Wing or move any of the cards into her lane and then you can potentially move them later. Even 2099, of course, like I mentioned, played with Madam Web. You can move 2099 to destroy any card in their lane. Surge is here to help out with the curve with this list, especially if we want to play the big powered cards out early. Xorn is really here to be paired up with Red Wing, getting that free Red Wing play of being able to move the Red Wing easily with Xorn. I think the synergy is really there. Mobius is a really good tech counter, especially with all the discounts that are happening right now in the current meta, even protecting yourself against a surge from your opponent. Red Wing has tremendous value in this list, especially being paired up with Madam Web or Xorn. Dracula is here to essentially absorb the power of Red Hulk, Magneto, or Infinite, or even Spider-Man 2099. Any of those picks are really good. Spider-Man 2099, again, like I mentioned, works well with Madam Web or Aranya or Ghost Spider. Red Hulk, Magneto, Infinite, they're pretty much fodder just for Dracula. So you could either play the Red Hulk or Magneto. Essentially, you're probably not going to be playing Infinite and you're just using him for Dracula. Now let's take a look at my third and final list. Now this list is called Xorn Control. I believe Xorn could work well with this type of list, moving cards from his lane and then potentially securing a lane with Storm and just messing them up with locations. So Zabu is here, of course, for cards like Captain Marvel, Galacta, Storm, War Machine. That discount is gonna be insane if you could pull off Zabu on curve. Ebony Maw has great synergy with War Machine and Infinite. You can pretty much play Ebony Maw as a 1/7 later turns with War Machine. Psylocke is here to ramp out cards early like Captain Marvel, Galacta, Storm, or War Machine. Your primary targets are probably gonna be Storm or War Machine or even Galacta. Surge is just tons of value right now in the current meta. You could discount any of the cards here. Definitely doesn't hurt to have Surge in your list. Xorn is here to pretty much bunt out cards from the Storm lane. You definitely don't want to run him in a different lane because potentially the opponents could use that as their benefit of punching cards into the Storm lane. So remember that you should be running Xorn in the Storm lane.
Captain Marvel is really good in this list, especially being paired up with Galacta, getting that +3 power, and potentially Captain Marvel could move into the lane that you stormed or you can't reach to, so Captain Marvel, tremendous value. Galacta, like I mentioned, any card really can benefit from her +3 power. Storm is the primary focus in this list, especially storming a lane, capturing that lane,
Potentially getting to that lane with War Machine or even blocking out your opponent with Legion. And then of course Xorn is really good in the Storm lane if you could bunt out cards that they try to capture that lane against Storm.
War Machine is really good in this list, especially being paired up with Storm or any bad locations, and even enabling cards like Ebony, Maw, and Infinite. Legion is our wild card of this list, especially if you pair him up right after Storm, it's gonna mess up your opponent. And especially if you have War Machine on the board, then you can play any lane after the Legion is being run after the Storm. So be careful of Legion, it can mess you up or you can mess up your opponent.
She-Hulk is here if you're floating energy and is basically just a power card to be played on the last turn.
And then of course, like I mentioned with Infinite, it's pretty much used with really War Machine.
More than likely, you have to have War Machine in order to play Infinite, so be careful of that.
Now let's take a look at the snapbacks that are featured with Xorn. So Xorn is with Surge, Prodigy, Elixir, and Captain Carter. Surge, Captain Carter, Prodigy, Elixir are already out in the snap pack, and then Xorn comes out on May 27th. Surge, I would say, is definitely a must-have. Her ability is really good, especially if you can snowball her ability and keep it going. That chain of effect is really good, so I would say she's very flexible, definitely a must-have. Prodigy, I would say, is a very situational card, but
I would say he's very good. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him. If you potentially get him, I would say definitely test him. He's very good if you could copy a card in that lane. I would say definitely go get him if you are interested in him.
I would say Elixir is definitely worth skipping. He's definitely not a must-have, or you should even worry about getting him. Captain Carter, like I mentioned in the past, definitely a valuable pick if you like Surfer or even like ongoing style list. So remember guys that you have the potential of getting old cards in this seasonal series 5-pack.
It really depends if you like the certain cards in this pack and if you like Xorn.
Now let's take a look at the community predictions for Xorn. So they said S tier 5%, A tier 21%, B tier 54%, and C tier 21%. So the community has generally said that the card is worth a B tier.
I would say it's definitely a very situational tech card. We haven't really seen a tech card that's this situational. He might have his uses of countering cards like Cosmo or a very dominant 3 or 4 cost cards. There are a lot of 3 cost cards that are being released in Marvel Snap, so Xorn might get more value depending on how many more get released.
Here's a community review from Cut. Thank you again for your review.
They said he's intriguing. Very unique lockdown type card. Has some good synergy you can build around, but also risk giving upside to your opponent too. Eager to experiment with him. So I agree for sure. Lockdown is definitely a potential for him. You saw the lockdown deck that I built, and definitely the risk of giving your opponent the ability is very scary, I would say, in Marvel Snap. And yes, definitely very exciting card to test with.
So if you want to be featured in the next video, make sure to follow the community post about the brand new card in Marvel Snap. And thank you again, guys, for your reviews.
Now let's take a look at my star ratings for Xorn.
So for competitive, I gave him a 3 stars.
I believe he definitely has some potential of being a decent tech counter. So his ability is very niche. It only affects 3 or 4 cost cards. So we will see how dominant it will be for disrupting cards or benefiting certain cards.
But the pool of cards that I looked at with 3 to 4 cost cards,
there's only really, a few that really benefit off of him. So it really depends on what your opponent is playing to really bring up the value of Xorn, I believe.
For fun, I gave him a 3 stars.
Sure, moving cards could be very fun, or moving your opponent's cards could be fun. But I would say, to be fair, his ability is not really that fancy, so I would give him a 3 stars.
For flexibility, I gave him a 2.5 stars. The decks that I showed you guys is very niche in a certain way.
Cards that benefit off of move or disrupt your opponent, sure. But he's not really a plug and play card unless maybe in a certain way where, 3 and 4 cost cards are so dominant in the meta, then maybe sure, might be a plug and play card. But right now, I don't really think he's a plug and play card.
For future changes,
3 stars. I believe maybe in the future he might get buffed. I would say the very nicheness of 3 and 4 cost cards is very narrow. I wish the pool of cards were a little bit more, but maybe it's just too strong, right? Because the ability happens all the time.
So we'll see if it might get buffed. Maybe in the future it will. I don't really see the card being nerfed. I would say 2-3 is definitely fair for him and in his ability.
So we'll see potentially what happens in the future.
Now let's take a look at my final review of Xorn. Is he worth a snapper skip? Let's take a look.
So for series 1 to 2 owners, 1 star. Unfortunately, you're going to be missing a lot of cards that work well with him. He is a very, I would say, expensive card. The cards that works well with are usually 3, 4, and 5. So definitely avoid them if you're a series 1 to 2 owner.
So for series 3 owners, I gave him a 3 stars. You're going to be missing a lot of
4 and 5 cost cards that could push them to be, usable. So I would say 3 stars is fair for him. For series 4 and 5 owners, I gave him a 3.5 stars. You're gonna be missing some series 5 cards that could make him a lot better. So I would say a fair 3.5 stars for him.
I believe the archetypes that he works well with are
Scream Move, Red Wing Dump, and Lane Control. And with that being said, unfortunately, I would say Xorn is a skip. I would say Xorn is definitely very niche for this ability, only affecting 3 and 4 cost cards. I would say some scenarios, sure, he could work. Again, the decks that I brewed,
they're only featuring a few cards that work well with them, like Red Wing or Vulture. I would say Xorn's value is really dependent on what your opponent's playing. If they're playing a Surfer type list, sure.
I would say tech cards in general, you want to have them very flexible. So for Xorn to be very niche like this, you definitely kind of want to avoid tech cards like this that are very narrow.
So let me know your thoughts on Xorn. Am I completely wrong? Did I miss any synergies? Did I miss any decks that he works well with? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video useful, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel. I would love for you to be a part of this amazing community here on YouTube. And I'll see you guys on the next Snapper Skip. Happy snapping.